Hello everyone, myself Rama Lakreddy, and today I will be discussing about my final project in the ADTF 5240, which is harvesting, storing, and retrieving data. So, coming to the final project, like the table of contents, or like I will be discussing about a strategy to deploy big data in a technology form, and architecture of big data implementation, and the assumptions, limitations, and the limitations in implementing the big data technology in a form. And in the part two, I will be discussing about the data pre-processing, and where I will be discussing more in depth about replacing the commas, using the data in the Excel, unchecking the zip codes and the state names using Open and Refine, and updating the postal codes format using the Excel. And also in the part 3, I will be discussing about data analytics using the Hive and Spark. And I will be discussing the speed of, which depends on Hive performs well or the Spark performs well. Then coming to what big data is really. So big data is like the term that describes a large volume of data, both structured and unstructured, that engages a business on a day-to-day basis. So, but it's not the amount of the data that is important. It's like what organizations do with the data that matters. So big data can be analyzed for insights that lead to better decisions on the strategic business moves. Like we know big data is mainly depends on the five V's, which is volume, velocity, veracity, and variability and veracity. So based on these five V's, like we can discuss why big data is important, because using the big data we can determine the root cause of failures, issues, and the defects in the near real time, and generating the coupons at the point of sale based on the customer's buying habits, and recalculating the entire risk portfolio in minutes, and detecting the fraudulent behavior before it affects your organization. So these are the main cases that we can deal with the big data. And coming to the focusing, why we need to focus on the big data is in the industry's part, because interconnected with the IoT and the other connected device, we have created a massive uptick in the amount of information that the organizations collect. So managing and analyzing the information is very important for the organizations. So that's why we need to focus on the big data. And so coming to the next part, I will be discussing about the how to collect any data. So collecting big data is mainly in different formats. Like the data is will be in the form of structured format, and the data can be in the form of unstructured or on the streaming data. So in the structured format, we can see like the retail stores data or the credit card data or the databases information, which is mainly in the form of a structured data format. And the unstructured data will contain the voice notes, and the Facebook, the geographical data, or the Hadoop data, which we daily analyze. So those are the form of the unstructured data. And coming to the streaming data, we have different types of streaming data, like the antennas data and the network data, which is in a binary format. Those are all the formats of the streaming data that we have. So collecting the data is like a challenge, which is combining transactional data stored in the relation databases with less structured data. And we also know like if it is a big data part, then it should contain all the forms of big data, which is structured, unstructured, and also the streaming data. So getting the right information to the right place is very important to identify the transactions or the patterns in the data. So that is the main concept of the big data. That's why the collection of data will plays a major role. And coming to the factors that affects the big data, so we can see like there are mainly a couple of factors which affect the success of the big data. Those are like the capability, the company's capability, and the second one is the human capability, which you can see over here. And the third one is like the technology capability and the analytics capability, environment, system quality, data information and quality, data management, and there are all the different factors that affects the success of the big data. So we can discuss about a bit in brief about them. So like for the company's capability, it refers to the ability to strategize and manage the big data analytics implementation effectively, and is regarded as the key success factor in the application of big data in companies. So which is the company's capabilities which we have talked about. And in the human capability, It depends on analyzing the complexity of the big data and like what are the peoples with the technical and managerial skills. And the technical capability also refers to the ability of analytics professional and performance and tasks in the big data environment. And coming to the technology capability, so it refers to the transforming big data into valuable information and provide valuable knowledge to the decision makers. The characteristics of items in the technology capability are scalability, integration, functionality, and flexibility. And coming to the analytics capability, it refers to the ability of big data analytics platform to acquire, store, process, and analyze the big data to be transformed into valuable information and effective in the supporting the decision making process. And coming to the environment, so environment factors refers to understanding on the advantage of using the big data in enhancing the organizational performance, and this factor may facilitate the improvement of the big data capability and creating new business model. So the items included in the understanding of organization towards the big data construct of these. And coming to the data management, data information quality, as I discussed before, in data management, so, due to the complex and hidden massive data, data management is a key strategy function for the big data implementation to derive valuable insights to knowledge and wisdom of the decision making. And the last one is the data information and quality. So, the big data analytics is the critical element for effective decision making. So, be making the big data implementation is often used by the decision makers within the decision making process. So data quality is often defined as the availability of data which meets user requirements. Previous studies suggested that data quality items comprised of availability, accuracy, and usability and understandability and the accessibility. So these are the main factors that we can say which are depends on the success of the big data. And we can also look into the, I mean, we can also discuss why these are very important. So coming to, so I will discuss about the company's capability, why it is very important, because it includes the organization capability, including top management support, big data analytics strategy, intensity of organization learning, collaboration, knowledge exchange, basic resources such as finance, and providing training. So that is one of the main factors that we can say why it is very important. And coming to the technology innovation, accelerates value. So we can see on the x-axis, we can see about the innovation, and on the y-axis we can see about the value. So basically it says that when the innovation increases, the value of the big data is also will be increasing. So when you see the left hand corner side, we can see the transaction systems, complex implementations, spread marks on the soil data. So which is having the less amount of innovations, which also have the less value in the market. And followed by those, we can see the ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, and OLAP, online analytical processing, and enterprise data warehouse. So compared to the previous transactional systems and spread marts and soil data, the ETL, OLAP, and enterprise data warehouse has much more innovation in those. So which basically increases the value of those in the industry. And followed by those ETL, OLAP, and enterprise data warehouse, we have the operational reporting and ad hoc analysis dashboards. So those are the things which have more innovation when compared with the previous transactional systems, ETL, OLAP, and Spreadmart. So when there is more innovation for in the form of Hadoop and the dashboards and ad hoc analysis, the value is also definitely will be increasing. And followed by those, at the last we have the machine learning and in memory and any data and Internet of Things, which is having the highest amount of innovation in those, and where the value of those is predominantly high when compared with the previous technologies, spread marts, and overlap, ETL, and Hadoop. So, from this chart, we can easily identify like what are the fields where the industry should focus on in order to have most of the innovation, and where they can get more value with those things. And coming to the big data across your business, like how we can embrace big data across your business. So there are here I am discussing about the four different types of projects that where the big data can be predominantly used in an organization. So we can see about the marketing, finance, sales, and the HR partners. Where in the marketing, if you see, we are mainly focusing on build the deeper customer relationships, and in the finance, we can talk about how it impacts your company's bottom line. And in the sales, we can talk about improving the revenue and the performance. And also in the HR, we can discuss about maximizing the employee engagement. And in coming to the marketing part, we can talk about different factors. Like here in the screen you can see show only problems, where we have on the left side we have the indicator and also the status. So using the big data, we can create one status to all the different things we are looking in the marketing department. For example, in the indicator we have the preliminary budget, where the status is like green, which is like accepted. And in the materials and packaging review, we have a triangle with yellow, which is on premise, and it is not yet accepted, but it is working on they are working on those. And using the book advertising slots, we also have the same triangle with yellow color in that. And coming to the next, we have the fall showcase event analysis, which is like a red rhombus, which indicates the status is still pending. And then next one is like end user survey with yellow triangle, and followed by technical review milestone with green dot on that. So these are the different things we can achieve using the big data. So these six factors will fall under the marketing side, where we can show the status of those to the end users. And coming to the finance part, which is for impacting your company's bottom line. Units, for example, they are like the unit sold and the discounts and the profit before tax, where you can see the graph over there. And it discusses about the different products like product A, product C, product F, and product D. Where on the x-axis you can see about the 50K, 60K, and 70K mark until 110K. And on the y-axis you can see about the discounts in millions. For example, they are getting the product is getting 0 million or 0.5 million or 1 million. It goes up to the 2 million mark. So these are the different things that we have in the finance part, where we can see like what are the different products, say the product A to product F, and where they fall under the graph, and how much discounts they are getting in the millions part. And these are the different parts in the finance sector where we can discuss. And coming to the sales part, we can see like how we can improve the revenue performance. And here we are mainly discussing about the revenue and the target part, where we have two bar graphs over there for the revenue and the target, where you can see on the north side. And here the south part is both are represented using bar graphs. So the where you can see the revenue is marked as gray, and the orange is the target. So on the y-axis we have the thousands mark, where we can see easily identify like the north pole and the south pole, where they have both the revenue and target. And coming to the departments, these are mainly discussing about the sales part, which region has more number of sales. So here the main idea behind this slide is like where we can discuss more about the big data across your business, like where you can exactly use the big data in your business. So coming to the HR, we can discuss about a maximize employee engagement and based on the department's headcount. So, for example, the x-axis indicates the total number of headcount for each business, and the y-axis indicates the what is the name of the business. So here you can see like we have in each and every organization we have mainly these kind of businesses like the sales department, R&D, and the marketing, and the IT department, and also the human resource department. So the finance, customer support, and the administration department, and the accounting department. So these are the main departments that we can find in any business organization. So the red bar indicates like how many headcount is present in the department. So we can discuss about what is the maximizing employee engagement in the department. So for example, we can see the IT has more number of headcount in the department, which is nearly to the 15, and followed by the administration, the R&D department, which is around 13 people as a headcount. And after the R&D and the administration, we can identify the fourth place as sales, which is around a 12 headcount, and followed by marketing and accounting, which is around 10, and the human resources and the finance were fall around 9 and 10, and the least was the customer support. So in every organization, we can identify like the customer support is having a less number of headcount in each and every sector. So these are the different things that we can use the big data in an organization. So in order to identify like what are the marketing, how the marketing team is doing, and what is the finance and what is the sales that we are having, and what is the HR department, how it entails the different kind of revenue and people how they are managing. So these are the main fields that we can inculcate big data in our organization, which provides a lot of insights and also training solutions for our upcoming business. So with this slide, we can understand like why big data is really important in any organization to move forward with the business, and to also plan for the future. What are the steps that they need to take to overcome all the different kind of problems that they face in the business. So coming to the next slide, we have the big data deployment framework. So here we can see about how we can deploy the big data in any organization. So on the top left corner, we can see like there are two arrows. One is the information flow, and then the other one is the data flow. So here we will start with the data owners first. So where, as we know, like the light orange arrow is the information flow, and the below one, which is maroon color, which is the data flow. And so the data owners initially will provide the information to the data providers, and once the information is with the data providers, then they will provide the data flow to the big data application. So once the data flow starts, so the big data application will provide, after analyzing the data, it will pass the data flow to the data consumers. And then the data consumers will pass the information, what they have collected, to the data viewers in order to give them the accessibility to look at the what are the analysis part that the big data application has done. So the data consumers will take the responsibility in providing the data to the data viewers. And along with the big data application, it also, as the big data application sends the data flow to the data consumers, it also sends the data flow to the big data frameworks. So what is this big data framework? So there are like few big data providers, framework providers, where they will provide these frameworks to the application part. And if they are like the Power BI, Tableau, and the business analytics part, where we can identify the different patterns in those data. So that is the main concept behind these big data frameworks. So where we can easily analyze and visualize the data that you have passed to the big data application. So the big data, there are like few of the application providers for the big data, where we can see with yellow arrow on that, where the big data providers, application providers, will provide the big data application. And the these two arrows will show like users. So the big data application providers will use the data providers, and also will use the big data frameworks, and they will provide the big data application with the data. And you can see the big data framework providers, they will provide the big data frameworks. And you can see the data viewers, these data viewers uses the data consumers and to visualize and to watch the data how it is analyzed. And these arrows like moving the computation to the data. So the data viewers will be moving the computation of the data to the data consumers, and the data consumers will be moving the computation to the big data application, and the big data application will be moving the computation of the data to the data providers. And you can also see like the big data application will be moving the computation to the big data frameworks. So these all will land the security and the privacy issues. So there is one more part here called the system orchestrators, which is uses the big data application along with all the big data providers, data viewers, and data owners. So this is the entire slide which discussing about the big data deployment framework in an organization. So this is mainly the framework which every organization uses in their internal teams, so that they can easily identify like what are the main parts in this big data deployment framework that they need to concentrate in order to smoothly identify and deploy these big data solutions in the organization. So coming to the next slide, I'm sorry, we have the architecture of planned implementation model. So here we will be discussing about the devices and the field gateway and the command and control, the cloud gateway. So in any organization we have all these different kind of gateways, controls, and in order to implement a big data architecture, so the application backend stream. So you can see in the bottom right corner the stream processing. The stream processing will be holding the cold storage, hot path analytics, notifications, machine learning, and the batch analytics. So the cold storage will be given by the batch analytics, and the application backend will provide the provisioning API and the device registry. And from the application backend also, we will get the command and control, which will be forwarded by, which will be followed by the devices and also the field gateway. So there is a vice versa transformation between the devices and the field gateway, and the cloud gateway will get information from the field gateway. So to discuss in detail, like till now we have read about like how companies are executing their plans according to insights gained from the big data analytics, but we don't know like we haven't heard about making a plan about how to carry big data analysis. Not really what is that, like feeding your curiosity. This is the most important part when a company thinks of applying big data analytics in its business. So in order to make a first move in the big data world, the traditional process of designing big data architecture goes something like this. Like the architect meets with the stakeholders to understand the company's objectives and then plan the processing framework with appropriate hardware and the software systems. Like planning the system ahead of time is crucial for the success of the big data. So when do I need big data architecture? If this is the main question that most question that the companies ask about, like for exploiting big data, one needs big data architecture, but not everyone's need one. So data in the order of hundreds of GBs does not require any kind of architecture. So unless until one does not process data in order of terabytes of petabytes of data consistently and might require scaling up in the future, they don't need a big data architecture. Additionally, use big data architecture when you want to invest in a big data project, have multiple sources of big data. So that is the main part that every organization should must consider. And there are different kind of layers in applying the architecture of the big data in any organization, which is a sources layer. So the big data sources are one of the that governs the big data architecture. So the designing of the architecture depends heavily on the data sources. So the data is arriving from numerous sources, as you know, like that two in different formats. These includes relational databases, company servers, sensors such as IoT devices, and the third party data providers. So and the another part is like data ingestion, which is very crucial part. So that is first layer of which the journey of the big data arriving from numerous sources begins. So this layer takes caring of categorizing the data for the smoother flow of the data into the further layers of architecture. So the primary goal of this layer is to furnish trouble-free transportation of data into the further layers of the data architecture. So there are like mainly 8 reasons why you should switch your career to the big data, because there is a different kind of storage layer, analysis layer, and we can also see like the real-time processing and the business intelligence layer. And there are also different kind of challenges that we can face and while doing the like big data transformation. So why? Because the big data technologies are still evolving. Big data technologies like Hadoop technologies such as Hive, Pig, Spark, Scala, And to choose the right technology according to your business requirements, it is the key to do a big data architecture. So implementing the big data architecture brings a lot of security challenges. The insights depend on centrally stored static data, but accessing this data is a challenge task for all the organizations, as the data could be ingested and consumed by multiple applications and platforms. So in the era where the data breaching is commonplace, implementing a robust security system becomes a necessity to safeguard the data from various threats. A device level agreement must be signed with the service providers at the beginning to ensure that safety of your data. So coming to the next slide, where I will be discussing about more about the data pre-processing. So in data pre-processing, we have data cleaning, data transformation, and the data reduction. So the data cleaning part, we have missing data, which contains ignoring tuples, filling the missing values manually, and by most improbable values, and doing the noisy data, mm, which is like binning method, where we'll be using the binning method, and regression and the clustering part. So these are the main things which we can identify in the data cleaning part. And coming to the data transformation, we have like the normalization, attribute selection, and discretization, and the concept of hierarchy generation, and there are the different things that we have in the data transformation part. And coming to the data reduction, we have data cube aggregation, and attribute subset selection, numerosity reduction, and dimensionality reduction. So these are the main things that we can discuss in the data pre-processing steps. So then to discuss in brief, like the data cleaning refers to the techniques to clean data by removing outliers, replacing missing values, smoothing the noisy data, and correcting the inconsistent data. And along with that, many techniques are used to perform each of these tasks, where each technique is specific to user's preference or a problem set. Below each task is like explained, like where we can see like the missing values, like removing the training example, filling the missing values manually, using a standard value to replace the missing values, and using the central tendency like mean, median, mode for attribute to replace the missing values, and using the central tendency like mean, median, mode for attribute belonging to the same class to replace the missing values, and using the most probable value to fill the missing values. So these are the main different kinds of data cleaning that we can see. And there is one more part called the noisy data, where the binning method, using the binning method smooths the sorted values by using the values around it. And the regression, where we can do the linear regression and multiple linear regression, which can be used to smooth the data. And that's how we can discuss about different data pre-processing techniques, and also about different data transformation and data reduction techniques. And coming to the next slide, we have the loading the clean data from the GCP file storage to the HDFS. So here you can see like I have loaded GSUT and CP using this path. I have loaded the cleaned sales records after cleaning, after doing the data pre-processing. I have loaded it into the HDFS. So once I have loaded into the HDFS, I have selected the data in order to check like does my sales record exist in the HDFS database in order to use for the pre-processing or not. So once I confirm that I have loaded the data successfully, then I have started using I have created a directory in HDFS using HDFS DFS mkdir, and using my name and the sales record as a folder. And then I have imported, I mean I have copied the sales record into the HDFS, and you can see by searching the DFS put and data in sales records in the sales records path, I have successfully copied that. And once I have done that, I have checked for LS, and then I identified like there is a an item which I have provided in the sales record folder that it exists. And coming to the next part, here we are discussing about Apache Hadoop ecosystem with Hive. So in Hive, where I have once I have entered into the Hive using Beeline, then I have created a table using the sales record, and giving my location Hadoop location. So it identifies and it creates a table. So after creating a table, then I have created the top 5 states with the greatest number of customers by writing this command, the select C state and the top 5 states, and then I will get these 5 states like California, New York, Texas, and Pennsylvania. And coming to the next, I will be figuring out top 10 zip codes, areas with the best sales amount, and there I will be getting about these the top 10, which the zip codes with which we have more number of sales. And coming to the next slide, we have the Apache Hadoop ecosystem with Spark, where we have showing the tables and the same concept I have implemented using Spark, and where I have created like select C state and now to identify what are the different top 10 zip codes where I have identified the New York. And here mainly I was discussing about the time taken to identify each of those. So when comparing both the speed and performance of the Hive and MapReduce and the Spark, we can identify like MapReduce first converts the SQL query into Hadoop MapReduce job and before transferring that. And coming to the Spark does in-memory computations and transformations by itself. And because of the reducing the number of read and write cycles, the Spark is very fast in processing. The primary advantage of Spark is that it can launch the task much faster. So these are the main things that we can identify from the Spark and Hive, why it is very fast. And thank you so much for attending the presentation. And please let me know if you have any further questions on this.